name is Joni Lane, and I am your host. You were listening to music by Sam Houston, and that's off of his CD, Beyond the Crescent Moon. If you're interested in knowing more about Sam and his music, please visit his website at samhouston, that's EUSTON.com. And he has some CDs there available for purchase. I also have some available at my nonprofit for purchase, which you can pick up on your Monday night visits to me when we come for our meditation. Thank you, LCM TV, for having us here. We're here every Monday at 3 o'clock. That's Pacific Daylight Time. And we have a 1 hour discussion. Sometimes we have guests. And if you're interested in being a guest or know someone who might be a good guest for us who has a positive message, please email me or give me a call and let me know. I love to have guests on. And I love to share my knowledge as well with you. Thank you, Mark Stangolini, for being our engineer and making all this magic happen. As I mentioned, we have a non-profit in Kelseyville, California, which is about 2 hours north of San Francisco. Monday nights at 7 o'clock every week we hold a meditation, and that could be a mindfulness meditation or a loving kindness meditation or a Vipassana insight meditation. So we have a variety of different meditations that we teach. And I say teach because a lot of people are beginning to just learn meditation, how it begins, how you can use it to grow and learn. And it's a process, it's a practice. And we can offer some instruction in that. On the second Tuesday of every month, I hold a 12 in Zen. And 12 in Zen is about the 12 steps and a Zen Buddhist koan. And a koan is a story or a parable that's been paired up with that particular step. And it could be based on the traditional AA steps. We also have steps based on Zen practitioner and societal normal. So you don't really need to be in a recovery program or a 12-step program in order to benefit from this. The steps are based on personal growth, and the koans help us kind of piece together what's going on in our life, and how to grow from it, how to learn from it, how to be better people. It's a really interesting night, and I invite you all to come second Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock. There's no cost for either the 12 in Zen or the Monday night meditation. We're a nonprofit, and we'll run on donations, so whatever you can comfortably afford is appreciated. Over the last couple of months, I've been going over the Four Noble Truths and the 3 difficult practices. And I do this because it helps. We're all in a state of suffering to a certain degree. And as humans, we're emotional. And these emotions can cause us to suffer. A lot of times we're caught in our own mind creating suffering. And so in teaching the Four Noble Truths, which is the first noble truth of suffering exists, the second truth of suffering has a cause, the third being suffering ceases when attachment to desire ceases, and then the fourth noble truth, freedom from suffering is possible by practicing the Eightfold Path, otherwise known as the path or the way or the Dharma. And that's simply practicing the first 3 noble truths. The 3 difficult practices that they speak of in Buddhist practice is acknowledging your behavior, noticing when you're hooked in your habitual pattern of behavior that's causing suffering. The second, do something different, which is intentionally choosing a different, fresh behavior. And the third, making this a way of life and practicing this daily. So you can see that the 3 difficult practices are very similar to the Four Noble Truths. And I think probably an easier way to understand and acquire the knowledge on how to improve your happiness. Last week we talked about practicing acknowledging your behavior or not acknowledging the hooks. Now when I'm talking about a hook, I'm talking about the knee-jerk reaction that we have in a situation. If someone says something that pushes one of our buttons, we have an automatic reaction without even really thinking about it. And we kind of fall into this chain reaction of behavior because it's a habitual pattern. But often it causes us to be very unhappy because it's usually based on defensive actions. So last week when I talked about practicing acknowledging your hooks, noticing when they happen, how do you get hooked? What buttons were pushed? How does it feel in your body? Do you tighten up? Do your shoulders raise? Does your stomach hurt? And noticing how it feels in your heart, in your spirit, in your behavior.
Could you pull your scarf a little away from the mic? It's rubbing up. There we go.
I don't want to rub on my mic. All you'll hear is the rustling of my scarf.
Yeah.
So once you're aware of your behaviors and your knee-jerk reactions or your habitual reactions, you can take a look at how they feel and notice what causes them. Notice, are the same buttons being pushed every time something happens? Do you have habitual patterns of reaction? Once you become aware of when you're getting caught in your hook or feeling that tug or that pull into that behavior, it's almost like you really can't help it. You're automatically pulled into this behavior and you just want to react. But once you become aware of it, then you can pause and stop. You don't have to go down that road you always go down. So this is what we were talking about last week, and I hope at some point you practice acknowledging those hooks and becoming aware of them. If not, there's no time like the present to start doing that. And every time you notice that feeling of being tugged in a direction, somebody pushes your button and you immediately want to react, that's what is known as shenpa. That suffering, that feeling of being pulled in, that feeling of needing to react is called shenpa. And shenpa is a very convoluted explanation, but simplified it means being caught, being hooked in that behavior, being pulled into that unhealthy response and causing suffering for yourself and others. So when I'm talking about what is shenpa, I'm talking about that moment, that particular moment when you feel the button pushed, when you're instantly, in a half a second, reacting to something. That is caught in the shenpa, caught in your reaction. Giving it a name is helpful because when you notice it, and if you don't know what to do, you can simply notice it and say, shenpa. That brings it to the attention of, I am now caught in it, I know I am, and now you're given a choice. So say you're in a conversation with someone and everything's going along well, you're just talking, and suddenly they say something that just pushes a button and you don't even know where it is, what it means. It just, suddenly something really upsets you about something they said. And you immediately fall into a place that's very uncomfortable, and you either want to back away from the person and stop the conversation, or you may want to defend yourself and react in a very defensive way. Neither one of those is is going to cause a lot of happiness. If you pull away from someone, they're going to notice that you're uncomfortable. That makes them uncomfortable. If you react in a defensive way, they're going to become defensive. And this is caught in the shenpa. This is where the cycle begins. So once you notice it, now you have a choice. Now you can go along with your habitual behavior, which is usually very destructive, or you can pause and return to your openness and your higher mind. When we wake up in the morning after a good night's sleep and we're feeling good, and you know that peaceful kind of feeling where you're just kind of gliding through the morning and everything feels good, that's a state of openness. That's a state of free in a higher mind. You're not really caught in any suffering at the moment. I know most children feel this way when they wake up and they're very excited to start their day. They don't really have the world's burdens on their shoulders yet. They're not really caught in that Shenpa. They're very open. They're very loving. They have natural loving energy that they shine without really thinking about it. Because they're in their higher mind and their natural wisdom is just kind of leading them through the day. And it's very peaceful and sweet, and we all love it. We all love seeing it, and we love it when it happens to us. And we can get there. This is where you pause. When you feel yourself being tugged in a direction, you pause and take a breath. Notice that you're being pulled in a direction that makes you uncomfortable, and intentionally go to the quieter place. If you can't find the quieter place because you're really upset, which happens because we're human, often you can just not say anything and just kind of notice how your body feels, notice how you feel emotionally, and just kind of step back a little bit. You don't have to get involved with that uncomfortable feeling. It takes a bit of practice. It takes a bit of practice to notice it in the first place. And it takes a lot of practice to step away from it after you've identified it. So this week's practice that I'm going to suggest to you is to pick one day, just one day, that you intentionally not act on or say anything negative. It's very difficult. This week I want you to try not to fall into the chain reaction of your habitual patterns and your habitual behavior. Just one day. And in doing this, it will heighten your awareness of the Shenpa, how often it comes up in your day, how often you feel the buttons being pushed or being hooked into this pull of reactionary behavior. And try to pick a day where you really can be conscious of it. Today I'm going to be conscious of my awareness of my feelings. How am I feeling when I speak to people? If you practice not saying and not acting in your typical way, you might feel really uncomfortable. It's a really comfortable place to go, to be pulled into that normal behavior that can cause suffering, because we know it really well. We're really comfortable with it. It's kind of our go-to place. And even though it's uncomfortable and it causes suffering, we go there because we know it. It's uncomfortable to not go there. It's almost impossible to not get sucked into that behavior. Now, noticing Shenpa is also noticing the pull or the tug or the reaction that you want to give. And in noticing that, you'll notice there's a spark, just a tiny bit of suffering, a tiny bit of Shenpa. And notice this also. Once you identify that if I react right now, I'm going to say things that I don't really want to say, so I'm not going to say them. But in doing that, you're noticing something else. You're noticing and becoming aware of the fact that if you did react in your normal way, it's like pouring kerosene on the spark of Shenpa. You're really feeding into it. You're really giving it a lot of fuel. And when you do that, it just takes you away. You're caught in it. It's really difficult to get out of it. But practicing one day a week of just noticing it and intentionally not reacting is very powerful. And I think you'll be surprised in that one day how many times it comes up. And you'll learn a lot from one day of just acknowledging it, just noticing it. Don't beat yourself up about it though. You're human, you have buttons, we all do. But just noticing them is the beginning to changing things. So when I talked last week about acknowledging your behavior, acknowledging what was going on, this week I'm talking about the practice of not reacting to it. These are two very important steps to changing the way you behave out of your knee-jerk reactions. And there's nothing wrong with behaving the way you do because you are a good person and you normally react very well. I'm talking about those times when something just doesn't sit right with us and we really want to tell somebody off. We really want to teach them a lesson because we're right and we want them to know it. It's not really a matter of being right and wrong. If someone doesn't agree with you, they're not going to agree with you. If you can calmly explain your side of things without getting caught in the shenpa, that's different. But I'm talking about those knee-jerk reactions that we all have. Just don't get caught in them. Notice them. Take a pause, take a breath, and choose not to get involved with that. And sometimes you can say, you know what, this is making me uncomfortable and I don't want to talk about it. Because maybe you don't know what to do. Maybe you don't know how to sit in that discomfort of walking away from it. And just announcing that to the person that you're relating to, saying, you know what, I'm uncomfortable. I don't really know why, but I think I need to quit talking about this right now. This is where you need to take your pause. And actually it kind of alerts them too that there's something going on that they may want to back off and check themselves. What did I say? What did I do? Why are they acting that way? It's kind of a learning situation for everyone when that happens. I think also the practice of meditation is a very big tool right here when I'm talking about this. It can be really helpful. In meditation, we notice when a thought arises and we recognize it and then we let it go. We all have thoughts, and in meditation it's the number one complaint I hear is I can't get my mind to stop thinking. And of course you can't. You're alive and you're human and you're going to think. But recognizing a thought, identifying it and letting it go, and coming back to your breath is part of learning to let go of automatic reactions and automatic behavior. So meditation is a really big part of what you may want to add to helping you understand when you're caught in your shenpa and when you can look at it, identify it, and let it go. So I suggest meditation. If you can't make it to our Monday night meditations, then please look for a meditation center in your area that offers mindfulness meditation to begin with. Being mindful of your thoughts, being mindful of your breath really helps you be mindful of when your button is being pushed and how you want to have a knee-jerk reaction, but you're not going to get involved in it. Sometimes you're going to get involved, but I suggest this week, just take one day where you intentionally try not to, just to become aware of it, just to become aware of how many times it may or may not happen, and to become aware of your reactions, how it feels in your body, how you get pulled into something. And if you do get pulled into something, afterwards notice, take a breath and notice it. Take a look at it. Take a look how did I get sucked into that? How did I get pulled in so deeply to that? And don't beat yourself up about it, just notice it. Because when you do notice what happens, you notice the pattern. And when you notice the pattern, it's easier to break the pattern. So our thinking is what keeps our negative behavior alive, too. It's our thinking that we create stories about things. Let's say you're in a lunch line and somebody ahead of you takes 3 scoops of fruit and there's only 1 grape left. See, the only example I could immediately come up with. But let's say it happened. And now you're standing in line and you're thinking to yourself, man, that person took the last scoops of fruit. He didn't really need that many scoops of fruit. He took 3 scoops of fruit, and I really wanted scoops of fruit today, and I have 1 grape. Now, you're really getting caught in the shenpa. This thing is happening in your mind. You're creating a story. Maybe you're creating a story about, who does he think he is anyway? Does he think he's better than me? Doesn't he care about the rest of us waiting in this line? How selfish. And you could go on and on about this fruit thing. Next week you can have a thought, man, that was that guy in line last week with the fruit that and you can drive yourself nuts with it. But we do it. We create these stories in our minds and we go over and over and over and we create something really huge. Maybe the guy was inconsiderate. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe the doctor put him on a fruit diet. We don't know. But does it really matter? Is it something you really need to go over and over and over in your mind about? It's funny, the things we hold on to. I bet if you look in your mind, there are things that you still talk about that bug you from a year ago. Maybe even longer. Maybe there's things in your childhood that you're still creating in your mind, the dramatization of things in your mind. And it creates a bigger problem. The negative energy that we create in our mind about things that we didn't like is because we can't accept something that is. Looking at the truth of what is. And we didn't like it. It's not what we wanted. So we're mad. And we're going to go over and over and over this in our head. And we're going to tell people about it. And we're going to get other people involved in this. And maybe they're going to feed it and say, yeah, that wasn't really nice at all. Who do they think they are? And now you've got a group. I see it happen in families all the time. Where a brother or a sister is mad at one or the other. And years later, they're still angry about something, and if you ask them to be specific, it really has come into an entirely different animal. Usually it has nothing to do with what originally happened. Our mind is a very powerful thing, and if we get caught in the shenpa of thinking, I'm right, you're wrong, you need to know it, and I'm going to keep repeating myself until you do. You're really just badgering someone, and you're really not helping them learn anything, except that you're badgering them. And you're causing yourself the suffering. And this pull, this need to get involved in our mind and create stories and to make something bigger than it really is, comes from a different place. When we recognize this button when it's first pushed, before we get involved in the big story that we're going to create, before we get sucked into our habitual patterns of behavior, we can look at it and start to understand that it's destructive. It's not helpful to you or to the other person. It's damaging your relationships. It's causing you unhappiness. It's causing others unhappiness. And if you walk around saying, so-and-so made me so mad, you're holding on to that anger, it's not going to cause you happiness. It's really typical behavior for humans. And often when we get caught in this, and our typical behavior of causing our own suffering, and we go to a therapist and say, I don't know why I'm so stressed all the time, I can't figure out why I'm so tense, that has a lot to do with it. And the therapist will probably point it out to you. Try to have you take ownership of it. Try to look at where it really comes from, as well as trying to help you see the truth of the matter. And many times therapists will tell you or suggest to you to take meditation classes, to learn how to be mindful so that you can learn how to identify things, identify thoughts, come back to your breath, let go of the thought, and find a peaceful place. Once you start doing it, it becomes easier. It becomes easier and easier. Just like the habit of being pulled into your behavior is automatic without really thinking about it, this becomes automatic after a while. Stopping and breathing becomes automatic. Pausing, looking at the situation, choosing to take a fresh start instead of the old path. So we're going to take a 2-minute break and we'll come back, and when we do, we'll continue suggestions on how to notice the Shenpa, take a breath, take a pause, and choose different behavior. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
You're invited to participate in a true multimedia experience coming to a home near you. LCM TV is bringing Lake County into the new millennium with news, live broadcast, information, music, talk shows, and local programming, all streaming in high definition online and soon to be on your Roku box. Join us at lcm-tv.com or be a part of our studio audience. You can also watch the shows at lakecomagazine.com as we provide programming to inform, enlighten, and maybe even enrage you. On Lake County Magazine Talk Show with Terry and Pete the Tax Guy, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Like racing? Try the Checkered Flag Show, hosted by Ace Naylor on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. All ages and divisions in regional and national fields. Joni Lane brings a positive light to you every Monday at 3 p.m. Pasha Space brings an international flair as they discuss ecological, health, and social issues in Haiti with people around the world. End up your week with positive, conscious sounds on Saturday at 9 a.m. with Sister T on the Bridge. This show is also simulcast on KMEC 105.1 FM in Ukiah. Our latest show, LCM TV News, is brought to you live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at noon, and rebroadcast at 6:30 p.m. and noon daily, Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday, featuring national, regional, and local news, weather, and sports. We have it all here for you on your local TV station, LCM TV. Join us online and soon on Roku, giving you access to all the best Lake County has to offer. We are LCMTV.com, your multimedia connection. Tune in for the fun. It's live TV at its best.
Hi and welcome back. This is Joni. I'm Joni Lane and this is The Positive Light. You were listening to music by Sam Houston and a commercial. That's right. We were having a 2-minute commercial on LCM TV for multimedia. And we were talking before the break about Shenpa, the suffering that happens when our buttons get pushed. And I think we all know what that means, that statement, when my buttons get pushed. Somebody will say something or do something that just rubs us the wrong way, and we want to react. Instantly, without thinking, we have a chain reaction. It's automatic and habitual, and usually not very productive and positive. I suggested one day this week to intentionally not get involved in the suffering. If you notice something, if someone pushes a button, something rubs you the wrong way, intentionally not get involved. Just notice it. Notice how it feels. So the instruction to practice that is notice that you're hooked and pause. Just notice it. You'll usually feel your body tighten up. You may even step back. Your shoulders may go up. And usually it's very noticeable to whoever you're talking to. Usually they can tell they said something that upset you. And you may want to notice your breath and take a deep breath in that pause and kind of just let it go when you exhale. And say to yourself, I'm not going to get involved. But in doing this, in this one day, notice what's happening in your body when you're feeling it. Notice how you physically feel in the pause. Notice how you feel before you take your breath, and notice how you feel afterwards when you exhale and let go and decide, I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to be pulled into that river of old behavior. I'm not going to have those knee-jerk reactions. I'm just going to let it go. It's almost like breaking away from the initial emotion or the initial reaction. The pause is important because it helps you become aware of your habit of automatically reacting. The pause helps you become aware of how the Shenpa feels in your body. The pause can help you, it gives you a chance to back away and to look at your feelings and kind of just notice them. Notice what they are. I think sometimes when we get so caught up in it, we don't really notice what we're feeling. We just react. So that pause can really help you notice, what are these feelings I'm feeling? Can I put words to them? It also gives you an opportunity to make a note of how often these button pushings come up through the day. Now I know there's going to be some days when the buttons get pushed more than others. But I think in just a general average day, certain things rub us the wrong way. It could even be that you're caught in traffic and you need to get home. You need to go pick up the kids from daycare. You need to go to the store. I need to get home. I gotta start dinner. You know, you got an entire recipe going on in your head that you're adding more and more stress to yourself. But you're stuck in traffic. Is it really going to help the cars in front of you move faster? No, it's just going to add to your stress. And you can wish they would move faster all you want, but they're stuck in traffic and you're stuck in traffic. That's a really good time to take a look at what's happening to yourself physically. Take a deep breath. And just get resolved to the fact that traffic's stuck. Maybe you have to make a phone call, let somebody know you're going to be late. But really beyond that, what else can you do? Not a whole lot. Also during the pause, you begin to notice that the true nature of reality comes up. And that's what I was talking about in traffic. The true nature of reality is you may want to go faster, but you can't. You may want things to happen the way you want them to happen, but they're not going to. When we start playing that tape in our head and get caught up in it, and we start thinking, these people are not doing what I want them to do. They need to work harder. They need to work faster. You need to get out of my way. You know, you can want those things, but it's not necessarily going to happen. And the more you keep wanting and desiring these things, the more stress you're adding, the more disappointment you're adding to yourself, and the more suffering you're adding to yourself. So in this pause that I suggest, all of these things can be noted, and you can just notice them. I think a lot of times in our culture we have a tendency to berate ourselves and find what's wrong with ourselves or think I'm not doing it right. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think when we're taking a pause and we're noticing what we really need to do, which is accept reality as it is, not get involved in our automatic reaction. I think when we do that, we can just observe. We can just notice without saying, "Oh, I'm a bad person. There I go again. I'm doing that again. I'm doing it wrong." Really, it's just a process. It's a process and it's practice like anything else. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And the quicker you'll catch yourself. And after a while, with the fresh responses that you come up with instead of the knee-jerk reactions, those will become more and more automatic. And those will cause less and less suffering and bring you more and more peace. And the people around you as well. So it's a win-win for everybody. I made some notes here so that I can stay on task because there's some points that I really want to bring up that I think are very important. When you look at the truth about what is and not what you want things to be, you can acknowledge to yourself that this situation is impermanent. It's fluid, it's passing, it will be gone in a minute. It will change. An hour from now, something different will be there. So if you think that you're really stuck in traffic, you're really not stuck in traffic. You're sitting in your car waiting for traffic to flow, and it will. It is impermanent. It may not be on the schedule that you want it to be, and it may throw off your plans, which can be frustrating if you're attached to the outcome that you planned. But if it's not going to work out, and you learn to just kind of go with the flow, as they say, drift with the river of life instead of fighting the stream, you'll get where you're going, and you'll get there just as fast, but you won't get there as frustrated if you let go and just go along with the game plan that life is giving you at the moment. Really easy to say, a lot harder to do. I understand that. And that's why I'm only suggesting to practice this one day this week. Just pick a day. Also, while you're practicing this in that one day that you choose, again, notice if you're making up any stories. Notice if you are dramatizing anything. Are you making the situation worse in your mind than it really is? I'm not trying to make light of something that's very important, because sometimes things are very important. But kind of do a double check and make sure you're not making more of it than it is. Is it something you can let go of and come back to? Is it something that is impermanent and will flow, and in the next moment it will change? Often when we get caught in an emotional conversation with someone and they are just not seeing our point, we really want them to, and they refuse, aren't you causing yourself more stress? If they're not going to see what you're saying, they're not going to see what you're saying. On the other hand, maybe they do, and you've created something in your mind thinking, well, they're not really getting what I'm saying because they're not reacting the way you want them to. But maybe they are getting it, and now you're being dramatic and causing more frustration for yourself. It's something to note. It's something to look at. I think a lot of times we don't know we're doing that. And so this one day can be full of education in all of those departments. If you become aware of any of the thoughts, you'll begin to notice when the Shenpa arises. And you'll also, when you pause, begin to notice that the Shenpa passes quickly. So if you're caught up in a conversation with someone and you're really trying to make a point, and you're arguing back and forth, and you getting louder and louder and more aggressive. The moment you're just kind of stuck in that, you're really not flowing forward. You're staying put in that place of stress and tension. But if you choose to take a breath and pause and back away, you'll notice that that Shempa disintegrates really quickly. You move on to the next conversation and you haven't wasted all that energy and time on something that didn't really get you anywhere. So the more you notice it, the more you will see that when you pause, the Shempa dissipates quickly. And that's always a nice feeling when the tension goes away. Also remind yourself again that you're not bad or you're not wrong, right or wrong. The other person isn't right or wrong either. It's really not your job to educate other people on your opinions. They have their own. And they could educate you on their opinions, and then there's an entire Shempa going on and you're caught up in it. Once you notice the Shempa and you don't beat it, you don't pour kerosene onto that spark. You don't beat it. You don't continue to go on and on and on about it. You'll notice that it goes away pretty quickly. And if you choose a healthier action, you'll notice that you actually progress into the next step of the day quicker. I also want to point out one more thing about the Shempa, the separating. It steals time from you. It steals your happiness. It steals your energy. It is an energy thief and a happiness thief. And if you play with it and you play that game of getting caught in it, you will be giving up your happiness. So in noticing it, you're making a choice. Do you want to pause and take a breath and step away and let it go? Or do you want to get involved and let it suck your happiness away? You really do have those choices. And it's very difficult to do. We are so caught in our ways. We have our habitual patterns. They're so heavy, we don't even know we're walking into them. But pausing and recognizing it is a really big first step, because then you can change it. Then you can recognize that happiness thief and make a choice of whether you want to engage or not. That's a very simple way of putting it, but I think it states it pretty well. When you decide not to get involved with that happiness thief, you can then choose to step into your open-hearted, natural wisdom. And using your higher thought process and using your logical mind, you can choose a more peaceful path of reaction. You can choose the time thief and the happiness thief, or you can choose to be compassionate and loving and understanding and let it go and not allow the tension to get you, not allow the Shempa to steal your happiness. So I know I've repeated myself a lot today. I know that I've kept going over and over things, but I really want you to see that our patterns and our habitual behavior can cause us suffering. And when we notice it, and when we acknowledge it, and take a breath and step back from it, and observe it and learn from it, we can then make other choices to be happier by using our higher mind and our compassionate heart, and just letting go of the things that really don't matter, that cause us unhappiness. Another thing that you might want to think about is don't expect anything. Don't have hope. I know a lot of times people will come in to meditation and they have this hope of, well, if I do some meditation, I'm going to feel a lot better. And you will if you let go. But if you have a hope and an expectation, it's very difficult to meet that expectation. I think a lot of times we hear about the monks sitting on the mountain and how peaceful and happy they are. But meditation is a lot of work. It's a lot of practice. And really what we're learning to do is we're learning to let go of unhealthy thoughts. We're learning to identify the thought that comes in our mind and letting it go. Kind of placing it on a flowing river and letting it go. There will be another thought to replace it. And when it comes, we can let that thought go. But if you have an expectation, then you're setting yourself up for something that may not be the truth. And when you're working with the truth of what is, you're working with acceptance. And when you're accepting what is, you're also accepting that you cannot create. I can't say that. You are creating your own happiness, but you can't create the hope of bliss. Because those moments are so few in meditation that if you're expecting that, you will be disappointed. I really hope the message is clear that you create your own life, and that is a matter of choices. You can choose to be happy and accept what is, and you can choose to have compassionate, loving behavior, or you can get caught up in wanting to be right, wanting to be heard. And being heard doesn't mean that you have to keep repeating yourself until somebody says, yeah, okay, I heard you. I do that. I do that because I want validation, and I think we all do that. But if you get to a point where you're just trying to be self-righteous, and I know best, and I'm going to tell you, and yeah, I'm right because, then you're really getting caught up in a behavior that's going to cause you stress and cause unhappiness to yourself. This is where wars begin. When our country or any other country decides that we have to be right and we have to teach a lesson and we need to do this, instead of listening and working things out and learning to let go of things that don't really matter in the big picture, when the egos come down to clashing to the point where wars happen, we have to start looking at where do we start? Where do we start to begin to change the world? The only place we can start is where we're at. One person. You can only change you. You can't change other people. You can make your points heard. You can make yourself understood if it's delivered in a compassionate and loving way. But closing the door on compassion and open-heartedness is a very cruel place to be, because you're not allowing yourself to be happy and you're taking the happiness of others, and it's very selfish. So I'm making the point of Shenpa, the act of suffering, and I want you to see it, but to pick a day and notice it. Take a breath and pause and back off and let it go. Notice how it feels in your body. Notice how it feels in your heart. Maybe you can find a different way to react. Maybe you don't want to get involved. That would probably be the best beginning move to make, is just not get involved. Just notice it. So, one day this week, we'll do that. We'll take one day and just notice the Shenpa. I'm going to take the next few minutes and do a little guided meditation for you. And so I'm going to invite you to sit as comfortably as you can and put your shoulders down and take a couple of deep breaths. And keeping your eyes open with your gaze slightly downward in front of you, keeping the front of your body open, your heart area especially feeling open, and keeping your body upright but comfortable. This posture is open heart, not slumping and closing off the heart. This helps us to be fully here with an open heart. To become grounded and become aware of your body. Beginning with the top of your feet. Your toes. Notice your feet, whether they're planted on the ground or if you're sitting cross-legged. If there's any tension, taking a breath and exhaling and releasing that tension in your feet. And just relaxing into it. And continue to slowly move up to your ankle. Keeping your eyes fixed on that one spot in front of you. Notice any tension. And exhaling and releasing that tension in your ankle. And moving up your legs, breathing in and exhaling any tension, relaxing into it. And grounding yourself a little deeper. Moving up to your hips, your abdomen. Notice your hips feeling a little heavier or sinking a little deeper into your seat. Your abdomen relaxing as you exhale. Allow your chest to feel relaxed, your lungs opening with your breath. Your shoulders relaxing as you exhale. And moving up your neck, back of your head, your top of your head, all feeling very relaxed and fluid. And your forehead relaxing, your cheeks, your face, your ears. Moving back down your neck, your shoulders. Letting your arms relax and your fingers. Keeping your attention on your breath, lungs. Notice the air flowing in freely. And your body relaxing as you exhale. Allow yourself to really feel your body. And if a thought comes in, you can inhale and exhale and blow the thought away and let that thought go. thought comes in, you can identify the thought and then let it drift away. Continue to sit in your body, letting go of any tension, breathing slowly. And I invite you back next week at 3 o'clock to join us again. And we'll continue to play this music until the hour is up. And continue to just breathe